I'm Susan. Welcome to Tea and Games. Since I last talked to you all, I joined a few discords of other YouTube content creators, and consequently by posting in there, people found me. So I've got a lot of new subscribers, which is so weird. Hi! I'm glad you're here. Really, I am. And I'm glad if you enjoy the videos. I'm sorry if you don't. Anyhow, this is one of those kind of New Year's videos. Last year, in January, I did an Unplayed Games resolution, and it did not go well. And talking about all the ways it did not go well was my very first video in September of last year, which was the point at which I officially bailed out. And I'll put a link to that video below if you want to watch it. It's technically not terribly good, meaning technically even worse than this one, because I didn't know the difference between looking at the lens and the screen, and I was like distracted by my own face. I'm staring off into space for the whole video. And I do it a bit on the second video too. I didn't really start to hit my stride until the third video, so you have been warned. But anyhow, there are a lot of kind of traditional videos that people do at the beginning of the year. And one is list of games that they've played and best games of last year and resolutions to play those unplayed games that are on the shelf or to not buy quite so many games. And this is going to kind of be a little bit of all of that, but mostly it's going to be looking at that whole Unplayed Games thing, because that's kind of how this video series started, was the whole Unplayed Games thing. But first, we have a list, and it is a very, very, very short list. This is kind of in answer to all of those people who have just given lists of like incredibly impressive numbers of 2022 games played. And my husband and I, we're casual weekend board gamers. I mean, we would basically have to get up on Saturday morning and play board games until we dropped of exhaustion at midnight or Sunday or something to hit those kind of numbers. And we kind of have a life, and we do other things on the weekend. This, by the way, is National Hobby Month, and one of my hobbies is gardening. And gardening bumps out board games sometimes, because gardening is it's kind of got a time-specific thing. It's got a clock ticking on it. If something needs to be done in the garden, then it kind of needs to be done now, not sometime later when you might not actually have time for it. You got to plant things at a certain time, and if things need to be watered, they need to be watered. If it needs to be weeded, it needs to be weeded. And you got to harvest things when they're ripe, otherwise they're gone bad. So yeah, garden tending kind of bumps some things off, including sometimes we just don't have a lot of time to play board games on the weekends because we're doing other stuff, including garden projects. But anyhow, getting to that list, 2022 games. I mentioned in that very first video that I did that we are not about the hotness. We are not about the most recent, hottest, bestest games that have just come out. We're more, as I put it in that video, all about the rapidly cooling leftovers rather than the hotness. Not fresh, hot out of the oven games, but the games that might have been fresh, hot out of the oven one of those days in the distant past. Or not so distant past, because board games go the board game cycle is very, very fast. An article in the Washington Post at the end of last year said, and they got this data from the BGG database, that over 3,000 board games are published every year. 3,000 released in a year. Yeah, you're not keeping up with that, are you? Neither am I. I don't even want to. So, of the games that came out last year in 2022, what did we play? Okay, so here's the thing. Being a board game list, it must have honorable mentions. Okay, the first game I will mention is a game that actually missed the honorable mention list. And that would be Bonanza, Bohnanza, the 25th anniversary edition. Because we didn't play that until January 2nd. Well, we're still kind of on a Christmas break. And so that is a game. The game was released 25 years ago, but we just now got it. And that pretty much tells you all you need to know about our board game buying habits. But now a game that did make our honorable mentions is the 10th anniversary edition of Morels, which I had played before on the app over and over and over again. I am really good at winning on the app. But in real life, with the cards on the table, not so much. That was a rude shock when I got that game, because apparently the AI for the app is, well, let's just say considerably less intelligent than my husband, who is pretty bright. So be warned, the app is a lot of fun, but if you learn how to play it on the app and then you sit down across the table from a real actual human being, you could get your clock cleaned, which is pretty much what happens to me every single time we play. But the 10th anniversary edition hit Kickstarter this past year, and I got that because Morels was on my list of games that I wanted to get, and it was kind of either out of print or borderline out of print. It was not showing up very many places. And I think the expansion foray was completely out of print, but I managed to get that on the Kickstarter too. And there were extras to the anniversary edition. So those are my honorable mentions. Now for the list of 2022 games we played. There are 5 of them, just 5, out of 3,000 games released. Which is what I mean when I say we are casual weekend board gamers. So the 5 new games we played in 2022, which were released in 2022, top of the list. I'm not doing a countdown. I'm ranking them from top to bottom. Top of the list, because it's such a short list, is Creature Comforts. We love Creature Comforts. It's fun. It's fast. The gameplay is very, very smooth. It's not fast and short in terms of being short. This isn't like a 10 or 15 minute game kind of fast. But still, you feel like you really actually played a game. But at the same time, it takes a little bit of time to play, but not like an all-day play. It doesn't take hours to play. But you feel like you've done something when you've played it. And the artwork is adorable. And I don't know, it has really a very feel-good theme. And everything depicted in the art book has a very good feel-good thing to it. It even has cards with board games on it. How can you not love something so self-referential as a board game with board game cards? But no, we love Creature Comforts. It's kind of got worker placement, dice placement, kind of a little bit of push your luck in there. I like it. I like it a lot. It was definitely the top game that we played of 2022, released in 2022. Second on that list would be Chili Mafia, which is just a little set collection card game with nifty chili pepper cards. And I like the nifty chili pepper cards. And my husband likes the chili pepper cards with the cute, like, shoot 'em up artwork. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's a light card game. It's got an expansion, which we have not delved into yet, but it's fun. I got it because I thought it would be a fun thing to play at a Mexican food restaurant with family. But now that I'm playing it, I'm thinking, I'm not sure I want to subject it to sticky fingers. So that may just be like for us before we have an evening meal of hot and spicy stuff. They also have some promo cards where the way you play it is when you play the card, somebody has to eat some hot sauce. So we may do that too. We haven't yet. The third game would be Gloomier, A Night at Hemlock Hall. If you've been watching my videos, you know that Robert and I like Gloom. We like the Gloom expansions. This is a standalone version of Gloom with the artwork similar to the same kind of artwork as the original, and thematically the same. It has one of the same families that is represented in the original version. But I don't know, that we've only played it once, and because it just got bumped for other things, and I don't know, that first playthrough, it struck both of us that something was off. I don't know if it was just the card distribution or what, but it seemed a bit unbalanced. So we need to give that one another shot, because it didn't play right. It didn't feel right. Not quite like all of the other mini plays we've had of Gloom with and without the expansions. But that is Gloomier. And it is number 3. Down from the top, Creature Comforts 1, Chili Mafia 2, Gloomier 3. 4 is going to be Skull Canyon Ski Fest. And I think it just kind of got edged out by Gloom, because we have already just such positive feelings about the Gloom series of card games and expansions and stuff. And we've got so many of them. We have a special grief case, it's called, a Gloom box, as I call it. Skull Canyon Ski Fest, it's a good game. We enjoyed playing it. It just seemed like it kind of suffered by comparison with some of the other games that we were playing around that time. And I think it probably needs a few more plays. It's a good game, but maybe not a great game. Jury's still kind of out on its level of goodness. And finally, the last game released in 2022 that we played, bottom of the list of 5, and quite frankly, I think this would probably be at the bottom of any list that we made, is, and I'm going to get comments about this, I know, Caper Europe. I got the Kickstarter, and I did my research before I backed the Kickstarter, and this game just seemed to tick all the boxes. It seemed like something we would really, really like. And and a lot of people really, really like it. This makes a lot of people's lists for really good games, and particularly really good 2-player games. But we have played it, I don't even know how many times at this point, and we just don't like it. I mean, we play it, and it's like, okay, we did it again. That was not fun. Back on the shelf it goes. I mean, we just do not have fun playing it. We do not enjoy it. It just doesn't feel right to us. I can't even tell you why we don't like it, but we really, really, really don't like it. And that brings up an interesting point. When you're looking at videos and people are talking about how terrific games are, that's how terrific a game is to them. All the things that I'm saying about games I love, you may play that game and say, this game is crap. And I may say, I love that game, in a voice so high, the dogs, yes, there's the dog's tags jingling. I've got the dog right in here because my voice went up so high. Yes, good dogs. Down? No. Anyhow, a lot of people like a lot of games, and a lot of people dislike a lot of games, and what they like and what they dislike may not bear any relation whatsoever to what you like and dislike. Now, admittedly, games I like have a lot of overlap with games everybody likes. But every now and then, you'll get a game that people love, and you're just looking at that and going like, no. And I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. I mean, you like what you like and you don't like what you don't like. And sometimes you will be able to, my hands are turning red from the tea. The tea glass is hot. I mean, sometimes you can put your finger on it and you can say, this game does this and this, and gosh, that just bugs me every time we play. But sometimes a game, you're just playing and you just kind of go, and you can't really even say why not. And that's kind of the thing with Caper Europe. It just, I don't know. But anyhow, those are the 5 games we played that came out in 2022. Now, we did, toward the end of the year, and I might add Skull Canyon Ski Fest, which we have only played, I think, 2 times, maybe 3. That was one of those late in the year purchases. We got another 2022 game after Christmas, and that's First Rat. I have a lot of high hopes for that. That is very high on my list of things that I want to play in the coming year. Which brings us to... Okay, in the first vid, I talked about the Unplayed Games resolution and why we just couldn't do it. And I mean, there were some kind of game-specific reasons why, like a number of the games needed higher than our usual player count. And one of the games that was on, and is still on, our Unplayed Games list is Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. And that has a bunch of scenarios. It's a campaign game. It just goes on and on and on. So it's going to take a chunk of time to do. So, I mean, there are reasons why we didn't make it all the way through that list and why I bailed out. Part of the reason was I got tired of just powering through unplayed games and new games we were buying, which I'll get to that in a minute. And I wanted to play old favorites, and I knew that we were just not going to get to all of those games, particularly a campaign game as the year was drawing to an end. But let's look at what I said about why we could have done it for all of the games on our unplayed game list, but we didn't. First thing I said was play each game only once. Yeah, we usually play games a couple of times. There are a few games that only get one play. Usually that just has to do with the time period in which we're playing that weekend. Run out of time to give it another play, or there's something else that we really wanted to play that weekend. So yeah, that's a thing. But I wouldn't actually recommend playing a game only once, because the first playthrough is often rough, unless the game is super simple. You're still figuring things out, and you might not really have figured out yet what makes the game click, what makes it really work, and you may get some of the rules wrong, or even just a rule wrong. Trust me, sometimes you really only need to get one rule wrong to completely screw up gameplay. Been there, done that. Man, if I had a nickel for every time I did that, whew, I would be wealthy beyond the dreams of avarice, as the saying goes. But no, it's a good idea to play games more than once. Now, if you've got an unplayed game shelf, and there's just like huge numbers of games on it, and you're thinking like, if I play all of those games, each one only once, I can just power through it. And you're just really all about just checking things off that list, go for it. Why the heck not? I mean, if that's what makes you happy, just being able to check it off of the unplayed game shelf list. But that first playthrough, after it, you may not actually have an idea of the game that's representative of what gameplay will be like for you all the other times that you play it. The second thing I said was, if you want to make it through your unplayed games list, don't buy new games. Because you buy new games, the new games then become unplayed games, and the list gets longer. Yeah, not buying new games is a thing that just kind of basically doesn't work. And some people have put on temporary bans for not buying games, and then that results in binge buying later, because while they're not buying games, they're making a list of things to buy. And then when the time period's up, then they buy all of those things, and the ban didn't really do anything. So, I mean, you're going to probably want to get some new games over the course of a year, even if you're trying to do your unplayed games list, your unplayed games shelf, which is actually usually more than one shelf, let's face it. But the thing is, and this is what we learned when we did this, in order to be able to make this thing manageable and not get snowed under, when we would pick up a new game, we tried to buy the new game as we got them. And that also kind of knocked back that playing of the unplayed games. But on the other hand, we were not digging ourselves into a deeper hole, because when we got games, we played the games as we got them. And as this year starts, there are only 2 games that are left over from that we got last year. It was Kickstarters that were fulfilled that we didn't get to playing before the end of the year. So that's not actually too bad in terms of keeping up with games as they come in. Now, we bought a bunch of games right before the end of the year, and I'm not counting those, not right now anyway. Those come up in the tally a little bit later. So the third thing I said was, don't put the new games on the list. You're going to get new games. Don't put them on the list. Just put them someplace else and work on that list. And that kind of doesn't work either in a way. But I have learned some things from my horrible attempt at playing my unplayed games last year. There are downsides to playing a game only once. You want to play it a couple of times, and we did that. And because we did that, we didn't make it all the way through the list. I'm sure that was a factor. You can only play so many games if you're a casual weekend board gamer. We're not playing like every night. But I got kind of a new list item. And that is, don't count games on your unplayed games list. Don't count games that have a player count that you don't normally get to. Because, I mean, it may seem like cheating to say, okay, I've got this stack of games that require like 3 to 6 players or something, and they are unplayed, so I should count them, because it would be cheating to leave them off the list. But on the other hand, you put those games on the list, games that have player counts that you rarely hit, and you're setting yourself up for failure. Because if your normal player count is, say, 2 or 3 players, and you know that you can always hit that player count, then that means that all the games that take that player count, I mean, if you don't get around to playing them, that's all on you. There are no extenuating circumstances. You can make that player count. But on the other hand, if you have games that need a specific player count, like it needs to have 4 players, or it needs 5 to 6 players, because it's a party game or something like that, or whatever, it just needs more players, and you only hit that player count a couple of times a year when you get together with a larger group of friends. And if you get together with a larger group of friends, well, they're going to be bringing their games too. So that means that of the games that you brought because you need to get those unplayed games played, and now you've got enough people to play them, some of those people are not going to want to play this game or that game. And some of those people are going to be bringing games of their own that they were really wanting to play because they needed a higher player count. So you don't have total control over whether or not you can play those games at player counts you rarely hit. And that's another thing about buying games. You should sort of tailor your game collection to fit the player counts that you normally hit. I mean, if you have a regular game group and you're regularly playing 4 players, then the majority of games in your collection should be games that play well with that player count. And if you have a partner that you're living with that does not play board games, and you rarely ever have an opportunity to sit down across the table from another person and play 2-player games, then your game collection shouldn't have a huge number of 2-player games in it, because you're going to have a hard time making that number. Just like if you rarely ever get together with large numbers of people, and during the plague years, it's really hard to get together with large numbers of people, because sometimes those large number of peoples have health concerns that make them very risk averse, and for good reason. So, I mean, you're not going to want to stack up your collection. 50% of your collection should not be party games if you only play party games once or twice a year. Particularly if some of the people that are coming to those big group gatherings to play party games are also bringing their games, because they're going to want to play their games, so only some of yours are going to get played. And I kind of understand having games in your collection because they're really great games and you always want to have the opportunity to play them. And I get that. But you should kind of look at your games and your buying habits and sort of try to tailor your collection to what you can reasonably play. And I buy games that have higher player counts than we get to very often. But I don't buy a lot of them. Most of my games hit player counts that I am likely to hit. So that's something to keep in mind. If you really want to whittle that unplayed game shelf down, is you should not be stacking it with games that you're rarely going to have the opportunity to play, because they're going to stay on that shelf for a very long time. If your resolution is to get through that shelf this year, it's not going to happen if you count the games that have a player count that you can't hit very often. So, I mean, I kind of feel like you shouldn't be buying huge numbers of games that you're not going to be able to play very often because of the player count. Buy some, make good choices, but in terms of saying, I'm going to do my unplayed games, set those aside. Set them aside for special occasions when you can actually get the right people to play them. And don't count them when you're doing some kind of an unplayed games resolution, because you have very little control over whether or not they'll be played. And play new games as you buy them. That is a very big thing. You don't want to be adding things onto the list as fast as you're pulling them off. And if you just really have a hard time buying, curbing spending on board games and stuff like that, and not buying games faster than you can play them, and I think that's more of a problem with people with really huge collections. See, we think of our games as being very playable. We don't have a huge number. And I say we have cracked the 100 game mark. But for people who are actual board game collectors and a lot of people whose videos I watch, that's actually not a large number. So, I mean, you should buy new games as you play them, and if you have trouble getting that, then maybe set up a ratio. Say, play 2 games off of your unplayed game shelf, buy a new game, play the new game, then play a couple of games off your unplayed game shelf, then buy a new game and play a new game. Set up a 2-to-1 ratio of games that are games you bought a while back that you haven't gotten to, and the new games coming in, so that literally they're not coming in faster than you are playing them. And I kind of feel like another rule that you should have is don't stop playing your old favorites just to make some arbitrary resolution to get all of your unplayed games done. Because last year, toward the end of the year, and another reason why we bailed out on the unplayed games resolution is I wanted to play my old favorites. And I just, a lot of them, I was trying to play the newer stuff. I was playing the new games as they came in. And I was trying to play the games on the unplayed game shelf. And there are a lot of games I love and that we just didn't play very much of last year. And we're going to do more of that this year. So those are my suggestions. Take whatever you think you can use out of them or not. And see if you can come up with a good balance of unplayed games versus played games, and buying games versus whatever. As of today, now we're going to get into the numbers. As of today, not counting games with hard to make player counts for us, we have 17 unplayed games. 4 of those games are from post-Christmas sales. 2 of those games are Kickstarters that were delivered last year that we didn't get around to playing before the end of the year. So that leaves 11 games from the original unplayed games list at a year ago, at the beginning of last year. And that was a list of 23 games. And there's only 11 left on that list. So we played a dozen games from our Unplayed Games shelf last year, even though I bailed out on the actual Unplayed Game Shelf Challenge in September. It's not bad when you consider that we're just casual weekend board gamers. And I actually stopped the push to play all of the games before the end of the year. And also we bought more games, like a bunch more games. Look at the previous video, a bunch more games right around the end of the year. So, I mean, we didn't do too bad on all of that. But here's also an interesting thing. We had a lot of time off for Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's. And that previous video I did, Kind of Like a Haul is the name of the video. We got a lot of games. But between Thanksgiving and January 2nd, we played 10 new to us games. And we played 11 games off our Unplayed Games shelf last year. So maybe not too bad, but I'm not doing the Unplayed Games Challenge again this year. I am going to play games that are on my Unplayed Games shelf, and I think we have reached the time in the video to show you some of those games. Okay. And the video is going to wobble here because it's on the table, and the games are on the table. I got this a long time ago because I like Uwe Rosenberg games, and because this is a two-player game, and we play primarily two-player games. And I heard it was really good. Monique and Naveen are going to do a before you play on this and cover this game, do a playthrough of it. So I'm kind of really looking forward to that because I don't know. I've just been very chicken-hearted about tackling it. I've got an idea in the back of my mind that it's going to be really hard to learn. I mean, hard to play possibly, but really hard to learn. And I don't know why I think that, because I don't actually know that much about the game. Another game on our Unplayed Game shelf is Mariposas. And you see all these reflections? Yes, these two games are still in shrink. Both Fields of Arle and Mariposas are still in shrink. Elizabeth Hargrave is the designer of this. You have another Elizabeth Hargrave game on my Unplayed Game stack, but it's on the bottom. Tang Garden, still in shrink. And stretching over here. Ah! Yes, you get to hear me make all these really interesting sounds. Really. And here comes the dogs running because I squeaked. They probably think I'm a mouse. Apollo. This is a two-player or possibly team game, cooperative game. We both like space stuff. And that is not still in shrink. I guess I must have cracked that open as soon as I got it. Games are so heavy. Yeah, you know I'm a Firefly fan. Firefly fan, yes. And Firefly the game is maybe my all-time favorite game. I just really like it a lot. I think it kind of captures the situation in the TV show. I mean, it's pick up and deliver, point-to-point movement, and that is what they did in the show. And it was very, very hard sometimes for them to make their deliveries, as it is in the game. But this game, this is totally different, and we have not played it yet. And I don't know. I've already got one Firefly game that I love. Is there room in my heart for another? We shall see. We actually opened this up and put it on the table right after we got it. And for reasons that I don't even remember now. Gosh, this thing is actually dusty. That's... For reasons I don't even remember, we didn't play it. but we've actually got it out and set it up, but didn't play it, and I don't remember why. And somehow or other, it didn't make it back to the table. And again, I don't know why. No good reason. And here is the other Elizabeth Hargrave game, Wingspan, which I played on Board Game Arena, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I was totally lost. And I hear good things about this game. The only person I know in real life, not digitally, not online people all love this game, and they all play it, and they all think it's wonderful, and they all think it's like an entry-level game. I can tell you it's not an entry-level game, folks, because I know people who are not board gamers who tried to play this game, and it basically made them decide never to be board gamers. So yeah, it's like this game is not a welcoming game. Certainly people who really love birds and who do not know anything about modern board gaming are not going to find it all that welcoming unless they have a board gamer holding their hand and walking them through it. And quite frankly, I think I may need another board gamer more experienced than I am to hold my hand and walk me through it, because I've tried to play it on Steam. I've played it on BGA and had no idea what I was doing. I was just going through the motions. I have taken it out of the box and kind of attempted to walk myself through it, and yeah, no, I don't get it at all. So this is one that I really want to learn how to play. This is one of those games that I thought, I will love this game. I know I will love this game. This is a great game. I cannot wait to get it, because as soon as I buy it, I'm going to buy all of the expansions for it, like everything. And then I got the game and I just started trying to play, and I'm going like, wow, this is hell. I mean, just hell. And so I'm going to try to find a way to make this game not be a bad gaming experience for me. Yes, I want all of you out there rooting for me, because this is another game that everybody loves. And I think there's still the possibility that if I ever actually learned how to play it, I might actually love it. But the problem is I'm having trouble learning how to play it. So I don't know why. It's just one of those things. Sometimes you don't know why. You just bounce off of a game, but I think there's still hope for me with Wingspan. Anyhow, that isn't actually all of the games that I listed. The notebook, yes. This is not actually all of the games represented there in those numbers that I gave you right there at the end, but these are the biggies. Literally the biggies. Whoa. But it has been really nice talking to you. I hope that I have given you some food for thought to help you get your unplayed games played, because one of the things we found when we were playing our unplayed games last year is we pulled games off the shelf that we loved. I mean, we pulled games off the shelf, and I'm just thinking, oh my God, I've had this game on the shelf for 2 years. And if I had played it when I got it, I could have been enjoying this game for 2 years. So yeah, get those unplayed games played. And I hope I've given you some suggestions to make your board game collection and your board game plays a little bit more manageable. My New Year's resolution is going to be to log all of my gameplays in Board Game Stats. I've just started that at the beginning of this year, and we'll see if I can stick to it and log all of my games. And then I'll have some really interesting numbers for you next year. But it's been nice talking to you, looking over board games, sharing just thoughts on stuff. And it's been fun. And I'm really looking forward to playing these games. Even the games that I'm just kind of at this point halfway scared of. And there's the new games from the previous video. I'm going to put the link to that. I'm going to put a link to my very first video down below. But it's been fun, and I will see you next time around the table when we will talk about what we've played. Bye.